All right. Well, welcome everyone to the Happy PharmD podcast. Today I have a very special guest to talk to us about all her wealth of knowledge and experience over the years. She is a pharmacist and a certified nutrition specialist, and I have Miss Gail Clayton. Welcome to the podcast. Thank you so much for being here.
Hi, John. Thanks for inviting me.
Absolutely.
One thing that you had mentioned before we got on is kind of tell my story. So I graduated as a pharmacist in 1988 and worked as a pharmacist for many years. And then in the early 2000s, I started getting sick and, lots of neurological problems, mood changes, digestive problems, just all kind of mystery illnesses. And I went from doctor to doctor looking for answers. And and I would go with the list of, okay, I'm going to try this drug, this drug, this drug, and I went through the whole gamut of all of the drugs, and that sometimes some would help for a little bit, but nothing really helped. And then a friend of mine, she says, well, why don't you consider cutting out gluten? And I was like, what? Why should I do that? And she's like, well, I heard that diet can really play a big role. And so I tried it, and wow, it really, it really helped a lot. And so, and then it took me several years to figure out why I was sick. I was going to a lot of different doctors, and then one doctor said, there's nothing wrong with you. You need a psychiatrist. But I knew I was really sick. So I kept searching. And then I found the answer. I was being toxic mold poisoned where I worked. And I walked out. The day I figured it out, I walked out and I never walked back in. And then when I was looking for resources to help me, there really wasn't any except for, people on Facebook groups. And I joined them and I started buying all the supplements. I'm like, man, people really buy all this. I was, whatever anybody mentioned, I would just buy. And I didn't know anything about the supplements really. And then I met this PhD nutritionist, and we became friends. I contacted her because I had all kind of digestive issues. And so we became friends, and she encouraged me to go back to school and get a master's degree. And I thought, okay, I'll get a master's. And I thought I would just stop there. But oh my gosh, I loved it so much. Pharmacy, when I was going to pharmacy school, it was just work. But going to nutrition school, it was fun. I woke up every morning and couldn't wait to log on to do my classes. And so when I finished with the master's, I went on and got a doctorate. And and both of the universities that I went to University of Bridgeport for my master's, and went to Maryland University of Integrated Health for my doctorate. And both of them were very functional medicine based and looking for root causes.
Very cool. Very cool. And if you could just give me a timeline. So when was it that you started like the removing gluten and then figuring out what was going on?
Okay, so I removed gluten probably around 2004, 2005.
Okay.
And then 2008 when I figured out
what was going on.
2001, when the hospital that I was working at had a massive flood, and we had 35 feet of water in our sub basement, and I don't believe it was remediated properly, because a few months later I started getting sick, but I never really related it to the building. Anyway, so 2008 I figured out what was causing me to be ill. And then by 2011 or 2012, I started change degrees, because I was staying up all night reading all this nutrition stuff. I was buying nutrition books. I'm like, I'm like studying this stuff 8 hours a day anyway. I might as well get a degree and do something with it. So then I met Dr. Margaret Christensen, and she was hosted the Toxic Mold Summit. And at that point, right as I was graduating, and I said, well, I was creating a course on how to recover from mold illness, since I lived it myself, and Dr. Christensen had lived it herself. She says, well, I'm putting on the mold summit. And I said, why don't we get together? And so we did, and we created the very first mold summit. We created the mold detox diet. This is the book that you can get if you buy the course. It's an online course at molddetoxdiet.com. And then so we offer a book if you want the book as well. And it was very successful, because not everybody can afford to see a functional medicine doctor to get one-on-one help. So it's basically a course for beginners getting started with diet changes and lowering your toxic load and explaining why some people get sick and other people don't. And so it's a really good beginner course that's affordable for the general public because there really isn't any information out there. And then the following year, the second year, I wrote another course and explaining the whole immune system because, when you go to the doctor and you say, "Oh, I think I have mold illness," and he's like, does the skin prick test and the IgE and it's negative, and he says, "You don't have a mold allergy." And he's right, you don't. But the molds make toxins that can make you really, really sick. And so I wrote this book and wrote the course on exactly, kind of go through the immune system and exactly what mold does to your immune system and then how to fix it naturally, and get it back into homeostasis. And so those have been two wonderful projects that's kept me busy for a couple of years.
No, that's awesome. And it sounds like you kind of turned a negative into a positive, right? So you kind of were struggling with this and then figured out what it was and did so much research that you kind of found a passion, to help others and also to continue your knowledge and research on the topic. So it's very
Exactly.
cool.
Almost everybody that ends up in functional medicine ends up because they're looking for answers for their own health issues. All the doctors, pretty much everybody realizes that, we're taught in medical school and pharmacy school to prescribe a drug. It's all about writing prescriptions. And, and I tease some of the doctors. I say, I bet you wouldn't even know what to do if you walked into a patient's room without a prescription pad. And so I just love what I'm doing. I haven't actually worked in a retail pharmacy and or hospital for over 4 years. So I slowly started my practice, and I thought, oh boy, I'm going to set the world on fire. But starting your own functional medicine gig is not that easy. I mean, you can get the school, you can get the certifications, but getting people to pay you and hire you and pay cash is a whole nother story.
Yeah, so I would love to hear, like, so backing up. So once you finish your degree and you went from your master's to your doctorate, and then did you already kind of have an idea that's what you wanted to do in terms of starting your own practice, or did that?
Well, I tell you what, my very first semester of getting my master's degree, I started marketing myself. What I did is I joined all the Facebook health groups and I just kind of lurked around. And I wasn't taking clients, but I was like really interested in what, they were saying in all these health groups on toxic mold and I was really interested in the whole MTHFR, nutrigenomics. I thought that, I was going to cure the world with that until I learned more about it and realized it's more diet and lifestyle and very little bit of genetics. Yeah, so I joined all those groups and being a pharmacist, you're highly respected. And so I would, people would have questions and a lot of them I knew the answers and I would just answer, and then people started sending me personal messages. Do you take on clients? And for the first year, I'm like, no, I really don't. I'm not ready, and I really wasn't. But the second year, I started taking on clients, and it grew slowly. I started my own Facebook group. It's I have a nutrition group, and I try to put a lot of things in the name of the groups because I do so many things. Like just nutrition and I specialize in the immune system. So anybody with autoimmunity or something going wrong with your immune system, and also, the genetic SNPs such as the MTHFR and the other ones, and detoxification. So I think that's the name of my group, and then so people follow me, and as I was going through school, and all the discussion board posts that we would have to make, I would just copy my post and repurpose them and put them in there. It was great marketing, and people were like, "Wow, she's so smart." reposting all of my discussion board posts and, papers that I would write. And, I just enjoyed sharing my knowledge, and I was on there just giving out information left and right. And next thing you know, I have 12,000 followers and a full schedule.
Wow, that's amazing. So, and it's so cool that you found that just like even while you were getting your degree. And tell me more about, so once you finished getting your degree and you started getting a full client load, and how was that transition from looking back at working in the hospital and retail settings as a pharmacist?
Well, when I was getting my master's, I had two part-time pharmacist gigs, like working on weekends and stuff. And so when my client load started picking up, I quit one of them, the one that I hated the most. It seemed like it seemed like everything was all about you go in and they had all these work queues, and then you had to go in and just it was problem solving. It wasn't entering orders anymore, and it was just doing things. It was like fixing problems all day long. And then now, the paperwork involved in being a pharmacist is just insane these days. Like all the training, like every month you had to do all this training. And I'm like, well, I'm only working 2 days a month. Why should I have to like spend a whole day every month, doing training stuff? So anyway, so I quit one of those jobs as my business picked up. And then about a year later, the other little hospital that I really liked working at went bankrupt and they closed. So then I had no pharmacist job. And I was a little bit concerned because my business hadn't picked up at that point. I was just starting my doctorate. But I take a deep breath and exhale and, just believe in myself. And I just felt like God had a purpose for me going through my illness, because a lot of times we go through these difficult things in order to reach our purpose in life and to grow and learn and be who we are. So tragedies can turn into treasures, and so that's what I just put out any doubt and financial fears in the background, and just believed that I was going to be a success, and just kind of put it out there in the world, like, and I would envision success and then envision all these things I was going to accomplish and these things I was going to do. And it was okay. And as soon as I graduated, I made enough money to barely pay my bills. And as soon as I graduated, the university that I finished my master's degree was looking for teachers. And I says, well, I can teach. And they say, well, will you teach biochemistry? I'm like, oh, I don't know. But I was afraid to turn it down. And so I took it on. And boy, I relearned it, and I learned it was such a good thing that I did, because I learned it so well, and I rebuilt the course and everything. And my students love me because I bring a lot of nutrition knowledge in with every biochemical concept. When I was in pharmacy school, it was all about memorizing the structures of the
Yep.
cycle. No, you don't memorize any structures in my class. It's all about the function and all about the enzymes and all about the energy homeostasis. And it's so cool. And my students love it and I love it. Yeah. So then, once you're a teacher at the university, then the competition, it kind of gets, it levels the playing field with all the other, they're like, oh, well, she's also, a college professor. So she probably knows just as much, if not more, than the doctor. So when it comes to hiring, you have to convince people to spend their lunch money on hiring you. So you have to like do everything you can, get out there and network. I get on podcasts and summits and Facebook and any kind of marketing that I can think of to get myself out there.
So was that, and about the being a professor position, was that your first time ever teaching as well? Or?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So a lot of changes in that time frame from when you started school and right when you finished out and figuring out you wanted to do your own business on the side.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Well, I was kind of pretty old when I went back for my master's. I was 57 and I was 60 when I graduated. And then I was 63 when I graduated with my doctorate degree.
Wow. No, I mean,
so now I'm turning 65 and I'm just starting my career and I'm loving it. And everybody, all my friends, I'm like, I don't know. I don't think I ever want to retire because I like doing this so much. And then when you have your own business and you set your own schedule, and I don't know, it's just kind of fun growing it and coming up with new things and writing blogs. I get off on it.
Would you
It's
say that this is like
fun.
the happiest you've been in your whole career?
Absolutely. I remember the first day out of pharmacy school. See, I only chose pharmacy because I was in a bad marriage and I needed a way to support me and my kids. And so I got pharmacy because I knew that I would be able to support my kids on a pharmacist salary. And the very first day when I remember just thinking that this wasn't something that excited me. It was just a job. It was just to make money. And now, when I no longer had to work as a pharmacist and I was working as a nutritionist, that whole like that job thing that just went away. And now I feel free, and I'm doing the job that I was meant to do, and it doesn't ever feel like work, and it's very energizing. And and I would do it for free if I was rich, and not many pharmacists would still go into work every day if they were rich. Yeah,
No, that's a good way to put it to show like how much you look forward to it every day, right? That's when you know you found your passion and found what you truly enjoy to do. Is
absolutely.
you're actually not, you're not stressed about it. You don't even sounds like you wouldn't almost define it as work. Like you said, if you didn't have to worry about the money aspect, you would almost not even define it as work because you enjoy it so much. And that's awesome. And tell me more for those wondering, how hard was it for you to build your own business? Like for someone who maybe has a passion in something like nutrition or some other topic, but something maybe a little bit outside of pharmacy, right? But they want to kind of start, or it could be in pharmacy, but they want to start their own business. How hard was that for you, and how much, was it very difficult for you to do? I know you had to do a lot of research, I'm sure, but how was that process of doing that?
Well, I'm not very smart, business savvy, and I'm not very organized. I had no idea how to keep books, and I still don't. So I just kind of would throw receipts in a shoebox, and at the end of the year, like I would stress out over it and try to figure out what to do with everything. But I knew I had to form an LLC, and my daughter had one, so I asked her questions, and I knew I had to get a website, and I hired somebody that was horrid, and I had the worst website ever, and I think I would have made a lot more money starting off if I had a good website. But then as I was finishing up my doctorate degree, I came up with more money and I hired somebody else, and she did a fantastic job, and my business tripled when I got the new website.
Gotcha. No, no, that definitely is huge. You are right. Like that can make or break. Yeah, right. The business.
Yeah,
So
and
yeah.
so I had to figure out the logistics of it all, like how do I collect money and how do I set up the call and how do I schedule, and how do I keep books, and nobody had ever told me that they had like these fantastic online platforms that do it all for you. Finally, I tried two of them, that they were two or three, and they were awful. And then I ran into the one that I'm using now. It's low cost and it lets you scale up as your business grows. So, like, I tell my students to go ahead, and it's called Practice Better. And I'm not making any money off of this, but I think everybody should look into to Practice Better. And you can open up a Sprout account for free. And you can set up your whole back office, and they have videos. So basically, I would watch a video and I would pause it, and I would do it on my back office to where I got my whole office set up. Your protocols. You can make videos and put it in there, and set up your payment system through there through Stripe, and they have a video show you how to do everything. And they have widgets for your website for online scheduling. That all kind of options for you, and if you want to create packages, they even track your packages, and you can email your clients through the portal. All of that stuff, which is really fantastic and very, very, very helpful.
Very cool. Very cool. And I before we keep going on the business side, I would love to go back really quick to the part of when you began, or I guess before you even went back to school, that decision from you're currently full time to going back to school, especially later in your career, right? When maybe a lot of people would kind of hesitate to go back to school. Was there any internal like pressure, kind of holding yourself back, that not wanting to go back to school, or anyone outside kind of saying, you sure you want to go back to school? For others who maybe are thinking, maybe they want to try a different career path from pharmacy.
Well, I was really scared. I thought I was too old and I was a little bit scared about the money. But, the thing is, once I had gotten sick and realized conventional medicine had no answers, and then I was open to nutrition and I was open to supplements and I got so much help, then I realized that every day that I went into the work at the pharmacy, that I was not helping anybody. I mean, that it was all about making the pharmaceutical companies rich, and I felt like I was just a dispenser of their poison. And I just couldn't stand the fact that I would go in and I knew what these patients needed, but yeah, I couldn't do anything about it. And I was, part of the problem. And I just couldn't ethically do it anymore because I just didn't believe in the whole drug push thing. When, when somebody's sick and they go into the doctor and they give them a drug, and instead of asking them, well, what is your diet like, and what are your exposures, and what happened, and actually trying to fix the underlying problem rather than just giving drugs, and we just pile them on until they're taking until we bankrupt them or they die. And I just couldn't do it. I just couldn't do it anymore. And then I thought, well, I'll just sign up for one class and just see, because if I had talked myself out of it, and I'm like, okay, I'll just do one class. And I signed up for the intro to nutrition course. And oh my God, I thought I knew everything about nutrition after that one class. I'm like, this is so fantastic. I love it. And I was hooked. I couldn't even wait till the next semester. So it was good.
You
That's
think
what.
you kind of missed the feeling of learning, like school, because like you were more like in professional mode, and of course you have continuing educations and you're trying to learn all the newest guidelines and things like that. But do you think also that sense of being back and kind of learning new things that you hadn't known before was also a big drive to keep you going? Or
I wasn't learning stuff that I already knew. I mean, I can remember being a little bit upset that, like, I was really learning how to help people
Hmm.
versus when I was in pharmacy school, they skipped over that part and they jumped right. They're like, well, we don't really know what causes this, but we can treat it.
Okay,
Uh,
so you like learning the in between and kind of the whole story.
yeah, yeah, like when the Krebs cycle. Why does anybody need to memorize every structure in the Krebs cycle? What does that do for you? Nothing. And why do you need to learn? Why do you need to memorize the structures of the B vitamins? We had one lecture in pharmacy school, and it was on this. You had to memorize the structure and then a deficiency and what it causes. Well, I don't make my students learn any of that. I want to know what enzymes use those B vitamins as cofactors and how you can measure it in labs and in organic acids, and explain the whole pathway. Like, they need to know every enzyme and the metabolic pathway that uses thiamine. And so when you see an imbalance in the organic acids, oh, it's a thiamine deficiency.
It's very cool. It's a very cool way to look at it. And I'm curious, as you've kind of seen everything, right? And you're seeing different sides of pharmacy and health, and how lifestyle and diet can really affect a lot of things. Where do you see like functional medicine going from here? Where do you see that in your practice and just in general? Where do you see that going?
Well, my practice is booming. I attribute part of that to being on the Toxic Mold Summit and kind of aligning with Dr. Christensen. It really helps when you're aligned with somebody who's already made it to like celebrity status and they promote you. That's very, very helpful. So you want to be connected to as many people that can, or that are open to promoting you as possible. So as far as functional medicine, I mean, we're headed in that direction. People are sick of being sick, and people are looking for answers. And social media has really kind of helped functional medicine a lot because um, people are people will ask on social media, you know, well, what are you doing for your migraines, or what are you doing for your fibromyalgia or your autoimmune disease? And they'll like say, well, join Gail's Facebook group. She gives lots of good stuff. Or they'll join thyroid 411 group. The Hashimoto's group, and they've got a group for MTHFR and a group for everything that ails you. There's a Facebook group. And so everybody's sharing information, and it's all about, natural remedies, and it's not about the drugs. And so people are opening up and realizing that there's real help out there from people that are studying and specializing in functional medicine. And I've been able to, put autoimmune diseases in remission, and my and restore the life. There's nothing like it when you can restore somebody's life to normal functioning, and they're able to go back to work, or they're able, it saves their marriage, saves their family. They're able to get up out of bed and have a real life again. I mean, that just does it for me.
Now that's awesome. I love the way you put that. Just getting like quality of life back is so huge, right? And when you were saying earlier also how you were realizing, with pharmacy, it kind of was just solving the problem with a medication, right? Take this, and we don't really know in between, but this helps those symptoms, right? I can think about not a handful, but probably a good 3 to 4 people that I went to school with myself who kind of towards the latter years of pharmacy school kind of realized like, oh, like I kind of want to, like kind of what you're saying, right? I kind of want to learn more about like how to do more natural, homeopathic, more non-pharmacological ways, not just fixing something with a pill kind of deal. And I'm curious if that's becoming. I would assume it's probably becoming more popular as we go. More and more people are kind of starting to feel that way, or even trying to have a combination, along with pharmacy. But hey, let's try non-pharmacologic ways first and see if we can fix what's going on. You know, before giving a medication, or only maybe short term you'll have to take a medication while we're working on these new ways to help you. But I feel like that's very interesting, very cool way to look at it.
Yeah, hopefully that's the way that people are headed, but there's still a lot of opportunity for education out there. There's a lot of room for all of you pharmacists to turn, to jump ship and come to the other side. Come to the light side to where if you're not happy with what you're doing, and this is a way to work by, you can work by yourself like I'm doing, or there's a lot of doctors that you could work with. And if you have a good relationship with some doctors, and I have a doctor who's functional minded, and she's my medical director, that allows me to get all the labs that I need. And so and I help her out with some of her difficult clients. And so we kind of have this great relationship. If you can find some doctors out there that have enough business, to where they can bring you in and funnel clients to you, then that's great as well too. But unfortunately, I think big pharma has a pretty good stronghold on the AMA. They're the ones that dictate to the medical schools what they're allowed to teach, and they teach drug therapy. That's what it's all about. And until something breaks in that system, which is pretty sick, I don't see that changing. And you can't fix what you don't know is broken. And they're not teaching the doctors. The doctors really, really want to help their patients, but they're fed, at one narrow-minded, route. They have this rash, you give them this cream. They have that, they have depression, you give them a SSRI. They're not even taught what is driving the depression. Is it a food allergy? Is it neuroinflammation? Is it a fatty acid imbalance? Is it a nutrient deficiency? what are the drivers, that's making some people have their symptoms. And that part is just totally skipped.
Well, that brings up, as we wrap up here, I would love to ask, so if, people listening now, they're, interested in possibly looking more into this, right? Functional medicine, nutrition.
Hmm.
What would you recommend for like their first steps, right? Like they don't know too much about it, right? Again, pharmacy like you're saying, they don't really talk too much, a little bit of nutrition, but not really functional medicine.
Hmm.
Where would you recommend they start to look into these
Well,
things?
if you wanted to go into functional medicine, there's several ways you can do it. You can do the long route like me and spend 7 years and get 2 degrees. Or, there's IFM, the Institute of Functional Medicine, and they're quite pricey. They're like $20,000. It's a program, online videos and all of that. And then at the end, you take an exam and you get the IFM certification. There's other training programs. Another one that I think is really, really good, and it's not as long and it's not as expensive, it's called Functional Diagnostic Nutrition. It's FDN, and it's a self-paced, self-study. They give you lots of protocols. Everybody that I know that went that route, especially if you have a PharmD, you're already PharmD, but the FDN, it doesn't matter what state you're in. If you finish their program, they have a medical director that you can order all the labs through them that you need for your patients. And you're not going to be as in depth and as well studied as somebody that went through 7 years of grad school, but you will be able to make a huge dent in your patient's symptoms just by knowing how to find the triggers and pull the triggers away, change the diet, find all, the food sensitivities, heal the gut, restore digestion, reduce inflammation. You'll learn all the basics, and you could do that and get started, and they could, they mentor you and all of that. I think it's a really good program. And I think that there's some other ones too. There's Functional Medicine University. I heard that's a pretty good program too. It's not nearly as expensive as IFM. And then, of course, there's several universities that offer master's degree. They're online. I did my master's degree online with University of Bridgeport. There's UWM, Bridgeport, Maryland University of Integrative Health, and I think there's a couple of more. And then, of course, I think there's 2 doctorate of nutrition programs out there that are online too, as well. But yeah, so there's different ways you can do it, and some people, they don't even do that. They just watch the webinars. You can, like all of those lab companies have webinars that are free. You could just webinar yourself to death on those things. I, I get so many emails of all these webinars, and I'm like, I just don't have time for them all. You could probably get a PhD just watching all the free webinars that's out there by everybody.
No, that's great information. Thank you so much for that. And I really want to thank you again for being on the episode today and joining us on the podcast and providing us with all this information and all your knowledge and experience. And what would be the best way for people to reach out to you if they have any questions or are interested with more about what you do and your courses and things like that?
You can go to my website. It's drgailclayton.com. That's DRGAIL. And then my last name, CLAYTON. You can, send me a message through my website. You can join my Facebook group. You can like me on Facebook. I have my Facebook pages. Yeah. So, but the thing is, if you really are passionate about learning nutrition, you feel that that's your calling, just take one course. Just challenge yourself. You don't have to say, okay, I'm going to make a commitment and go 2 years or 7 years like Gail did. Just sign up and take one course and see if that's for you. Don't be scared and believe in yourself. You just have to. Anytime a negative thought would come in my mind, I would push it out and then replace it with the positivity. And like I just knew that God had wanted me coming down this path, and I just knew it was going to be successful, and it is.
No, that's awesome. And I think that's great advice. Just you never know until you try it, right? You don't know, even just one course, you might.
Yeah, and look
for
how
you
old I
love it.
am. I did motivate somebody to go back to school. She was like 48, and she's like, dang it, Gil went when she was 57 and I'm only 48. I can do it too. And so she,
Well, I think
so
that's
you're
also,
never too old.
like exactly what you're saying. You can, at any time in life, right? You can always go back and learn more or find your passion, and you never know. You take one course, and that could be the beginning of a whole new career
It
path,
could.
which
It
is
could.
awesome.
So if you want to learn all about the immune system, this is for practitioners, the Advanced Mold Immune course. You can go to molddetoxdiet.com and sign up for the course. I actually give the first video for each of these courses for free. This is more of the layperson get started, the Mold Detox Diet course, and then this is mostly for practitioners and all animated videos. Even if you just want to learn how the immune system works and fixing your own, if any kind of autoimmune disease, I mean, if you want the answers, I wrote the book.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Gail. I really appreciate your time, and thank you so much again for being on the podcast.
Thanks, John. I enjoyed it.
Hey, all. Thanks again so much for joining us today on this episode of the Happy PharmD podcast. I really hope you got to see a whole new perspective of how pharmacy can be, and also, not being afraid of changing gears and possibly either going back to school to become an expert in a certain field, or just growing interest in something else other than traditional pharmacy, going back to functional medicine, or what have you. But there are so many options out there. It is literally endless. And, it's never too late. At any age, you can always go back to school to increase your knowledge or to change up what you've been currently doing. Also, please reach out to us with any questions. Again, we're always here to speak with you, to offer our expertise, and also just to help you out in any way possible, whether career-wise or in any other option as well. And lastly, this will be, for the moment, this will be our last episode. We are taking a pause at the moment. We are going to be switching more to different live events with the Happy PharmD. So please stay tuned. Reach out to us again with any questions. And as always, thank you, all of you, so much for listening to the Happy PharmD podcast. We really appreciate it, and we look forward to the future. Thank you guys so much again. Bye-bye.